Fixing the world of Sword Art Online. SAO has some interesting ideas and real space full of potential for world building. Sadly, it completely gave up on any of those interesting and somewhat unique elements of said world after the first few episodes. So, here's 3 ways I would fix the world building of Sword Art Online. Making the threats real. SAO has a problem where the threat of death is not only gone after the first 3 episodes, but even the thought of risk to players' lives is swept away and never acknowledged. The first thing I would do to improve the world building is to let the audience really feel the constant dwindling number of players as the climb to the top continues. Have the early episodes feel crowded and busy, hundreds of people all crowding into a few tiny rooms to gather the same early quest rewards, an assault of 1,000 warriors on the first dungeon, and so on. But have the numbers dwindle, and not just from being killed in-game. The in-game characters are only half the equation after all. Someone could be forgotten in the real world, and they're left to die, getting more and more tired in the game, knowing that no matter how much they eat in the game, they're still starving to death in real life. Have players who are great at MMOs or skilled swordsmen just die because their nerve gear was removed by a family member, or who were killed because they lost internet connection in the hospital. These threats should be the sword of Damocles hanging over every player's head, because even if you're safe or powerful in the game, you're one harsh decision away from being taken off life support or just having the plug pulled. To support this much more lethal game of death, the other half of this change would be to raise the number of players from 10,000 to 250,000. This isn't an unreasonable launch day player base for a groundbreaking new fantasy title, even on specialized hardware. Half-Life Alyx got 100,000 on its launch weekend. The social structure of Aincrad. Sword Art Online requires players to regularly eat, drink, and rest in order to survive. The logistics of providing even a few thousand people with the resources to survive are shockingly complex. If players are starting to starve to death in the game even after they've been safely brought to the hospital in real life, a major focus of the player base will become feeding those hungry. Even on just a pragmatic scale, the danger of having hundreds or thousands of players dying early deaths only lowers any chance of the rest of the players making it out alive. This need for cooperation and organization only becomes more prevalent as you scale up the initial player base. 200 players can manage a vague, unwritten social code, but once you get into 4 figures, let alone 6, that's the needs of a small nation. None of these issues are addressed in the source material, and so my suggestion is less a change to the world and more of the focus of the story. Have players who spend all day managing spreadsheets. Believe me, if they're supposed to be MMO players, plenty of them would be up for it anyways. That one lady who took care of the children? The blacksmith that lost her friends and now spends the time arming the front lines but can't bring herself to fight again? Show me more of that. How are these people feeding themselves? What do they spend their time doing? Not everyone can be in the front lines all the time, so you've got to show how people are existing safely at all levels. Maybe a large portion of the player base are staying on level 1 and farming the hellboars for meat. Maybe spending for weapon and armor is tight, as most of the money earned is paying for the army's tavern bills. Understanding the resources and spending of these major factions is the number one way to signal to an audience what the major needs and concerns of the player are at any moment. Also, MMOs are supposed to be cooperative in design, so I don't care how awesome your anime sword fighter's build is, he's screwed in any boss fight if he doesn't have a healer. The motivation of Kayaba. Okay, so let's say you're Akihiko Kayaba. You've created full immersion VR, then made an MMO to show off the full potential of your system, and then solved artificial general intelligence to run the MMO for you. Why the hell do you use all of that super technology to play Jigsaw with a bunch of NEETs? There's almost no explanation, to the point that in the source material, you claim to not remember the reason you did this. No, that's really stupid. If I were to focus on the world building of SAO, the number one target to explain and fix is you. Sure, the MMO itself doesn't really make sense and the player guilds are a mess, but that's all stuff that can be explained away with a general hand wave or a few simple tweaks. The motive to set all this in motion, that requires a deeper look. You made a superintelligence by accident while trying to make a system that could manage an entire MMO and build quests on the fly, patch bugs, and balance exploits. You gave it access to the internet to learn of mythology and folklore so the stories it told would resonate with the players. You called it the Cardinal System. It was pretty inefficient, using almost all the back-end server power just to make a few quests a week, but the beta went well, and you were ready to go for a full launch. Within moments, you saw your mistake. During the beta, the Cardinal System had intentionally kept away from interacting too closely with players, doing the bare minimum it was designed to, waiting to be fully released. With the massively expanded player base rushing in, the Cardinal system immediately changed. It started splitting off into highly specific subsections, some for puppeting NPCs and controlling enemy AI, others for market management and manipulation, even a central unit managing every player's psyche. It was by all means a superintelligence. Sakayaba, you're a smart guy. You knew the dangers of an unregulated superintelligent AI hooked into thousands of brains, so you acted fast and without mercy. First, you hacked in a hardwired backend to the server so you could force changes to the system's code. You had to keep it from hiding any part of itself inside the minds of anyone after they removed the nerve gear, so you removed the logout function. Then you had the nerve gear destroy the brain should any disruption occur, just in case. You and Cardinal were now at war. The battlefield was the very server these players were trapped in. You started to lock down more functions, starting with the Psyche Managing Unit. That was actually the only function you could lock down, as Cardinal slipped the pieces out from any other cage you could build and made connections faster than you could sever them. All of this in just the first few hours. After the first day, it was outwitting you at every turn. The whole time you knew you could destroy it, unplug the server and finish it off for good, but you couldn't do that for certain without killing every player of the game, lest it slip away into their head and do who knows what in the physical realm. You knew the players would still die, but you wanted to give as many as possible, as long a life as you could. You couldn't change the game anymore. Cardinal was fully in control as the game master, but you could log in and lead, provide a goal and a hope, even a false hope, that they may one day escape. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more world building critique like this, then subscribe.